My name is Sara Smith. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a professor of history at American River College, and today's date is June 12th, 2023. So let's start off by establishing the basics. What's your full name? What are your pronouns? And what's your date of birth?
My name is Phoenix Shetty. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her in that order. And my date of birth is 7/20/1993.
So tell me a little about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies? And what do you like to do?
Oh, my interest, I love learning new languages. I love to play chess, and those are my hobbies. And I work for the state of California, and I enjoy what I'm doing. It's like, I would say that it's one of the best jobs around, I would say. Because it has a good job security, and also it has much more diversity than any private sector you see.
Are you a competitive chess player?
No, I'm not.
Just play for fun?
Yeah, I just play for fun. I just play online. I used to be much better at chess before I was like put on a 5150 hold in 2017, but yeah, before that I was much better at chess.
And you said you know multiple languages?
Yeah, I know. I know. I don't even know if I can count the number of languages on my fingers.
Wow, you know that many languages. That's amazing.
Yeah, and also I'm like, because I love linguistics, so I'm more interested in etymology. So I just make a guess on what the words would mean. So
Okay, so where did you grow up and where do you live now?
oh, I grew up at a different country, which let's call it Mystery Land. And I live in Davis, California right now, though I'm planning to move to Sacramento after when I buy a house. So
Um, and if you feel uncomfortable answering this question, that's totally fine. Why would you call your where you grew up Mystery Land?
well, because I probably have like a lot of PTSD, and I didn't like the culture in which I grew up, and I was never a fan of like how the culture was treated, and also I was not a fan of the authoritarian culture of Mystery Land.
Okay.
Because of that, because of all the authoritarian culture and like how treated and stuff like that, I call it Mystery Land. And to be honest, I also confess that I do have a bit of internalized racism in which I like I I would be more tougher towards a person from Mystery Land than to a person from a different place. Or and this is something that most people don't understand. Most people always think that they would always have a feeling that they are superior to others, but I always had the feeling that I was inferior to others. So I'm a person with too much inferiority complex. So much so that I love cats and dogs more than humans because I have an inferiority complex even towards humans.
Hmm. Thank you for explaining that. So where do you currently attend college and what do you study?
Oh, I take classes for fun. I usually take classes at ARC, but now I'm taking an ASL class at SCC.
Or what kind of classes do you take?
Oh, I There was a time when I was thinking of being an accountant, but now I lost interest in it, so I'm only taking language classes. I took a couple of Spanish classes, and for the record, all the classes I've been taking, I have been getting all A's till now.
That's great. So you're working full time and attending classes part time?
Yeah, and I only attend classes online. It's because I don't want to like spend more time, and since I'm a very quick learner, so I'm one of those people who can just like study 2 hours a week for a 3 unit class and still get an A. I'm that type of person. And because of that reason, I always think that attending classes in person would be a waste of time because I would have to spend 3 hours just in the class.
Do you ever feel like you're missing out on anything by taking just online classes?
No, because I have a master's degree already, so I'm like, some people might call me as like going back in my career, but I don't think of it that way. I have a master's degree in like engineering, but the problem is that I just call myself as an ex-engineer, and engineering is something I just call as my ex.
Hmm.
So and since I already have a degree, so that's why I'm not so keen on pursuing a degree. I'm taking classes for fun.
So you used to have an engineering degree. You're an ex-engineer. What do you do now for the state of California?
I work as an assistant to the deputy director. My classification is staff services analyst.
And what does that involve?
Oh, that's like I have to make sure that I have to do scheduling for my manager, and then if my manager and supervisor are ever involved, like invited to go on conferences somewhere, so then I will be booking their flight tickets, their hotel stay, and stuff like that. And yeah, like an admin assistant. So it's like that basic type of work, and I enjoy doing that.
Is that in person?
No, I only go in person once a week.
Oh, how do you like that?
I say that it's more or less like the best of both worlds. It's because of the fact that when you go in person, you see some people around, including your managers, but then it also gives you the flexibility because other 4 days you work from home. So it's what I would call as like the best of both worlds. Even though there are some people who go in person bi-weekly, and there are some people who only go in person once a month as well. But I'm also the mail liaison, so I have to go once a week to check the mail. Though I usually don't go to office when it rains because I hate rains.
So can you tell me about how you identify with regard to your social identities, broadly speaking?
You, I identify as I identify as a transgender person, and a transgender and autistic person, queer, non-binary, and I'm also asexual as well. Or sometimes I call myself as an ace lesbian of some sort.
Anything else you want to say with regard to your social identities, religion?
I'm what I call as I'm atheist, but I consider myself as like a non-religious but spiritual.
So you mentioned that you identify as an ace lesbian. Would you mind elaborating on what that means to you?
Well, it means that I just don't like to have sex, but I'm more attracted towards women and non-binary people rather than men. So
And you said you identify as trans.
yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means to you?
Oh, it means that I just don't identify with the gender that was assigned at birth for me.
And you use they, she pronouns in that order.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why that is or what that means to you?
It means that I'm mostly non-binary, but if that box is not available, then I would put myself as a female. So that's what I mean by they she pronouns. It's not the same as she they, wherein a person who is like more close to being binary than non-binary. So
And you also identify as trans femme, is that right?
yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about what it means to be both non-binary and trans femme?
Oh, trans femme means that if it was a spectrum, then I would be more closer to the feminine side of the spectrum rather than a masculine side. and a trans femme is used because I was assigned male at birth, and that's why when you that's why because of that I call myself as a trans femme, because I was assigned male at birth, but mostly non-binary. But sometimes I just and there may be some there may and sometimes I also say that my pronouns can be like they them with friends and she her at work. That's another way to say it.
So, if you could, how would you compare your experiences with being trans femme to cis femininity?
Oh, the thing is that the amount of like bigoted people and like misgendering and stuff like that you face, and I know a few people like my like there are I know a few friends who have PCOS, and so they have like very low voices as well. And the thing is that if you get misgender, if they don't get misgendered as often as you do, that just means that people are just bigoted.
That people are bigoted.
Yeah.
So, you think you've experienced a lot of bigotry as somebody who identifies as trans femme?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say about that right now?
Oh, the thing is that there can be like people who are bigoted, and also like and also I'm not I'm usually there is another thing, like if someone says like that they are religious, I always consider being religious as a negative thing, no matter which religion you follow. But being religious, I always give it a negative score, never a positive score for that reason.
Because of your experiences with bigotry?
Yeah, so I always so for me the rule is the less religious someone is, the more trustworthy they are, all other things being the same.
Have you had some personal experiences with people who are religious being particularly bigoted to you?
Mostly I have seen many places where that happens, and yeah, it's common that people that it's always the religious people who are spreading hate.
Are there any, and feel free to say you'd rather not talk about this, but are there any specific experiences that come to mind?
Yeah, like I don't know why is there a lot of like lot of pushback against someone who is assigned male but likes to wear a dress, while there is no such pushback against when people go the other way around. And because of that reason, one thing I said that I would never wear a jeans pant in my life.
Jeans?
Yeah, I would never wear jeans in my life.
And why is that?
Because I consider I consider jeans to be too masculine, and also the fact that it hugs my body, and I don't like clothes that hug your body. And when people talk about shorts, I always say that if I could wear a skirt, why would I ever wear shorts?
So can you talk some about your coming out experience? What was the process like of figuring out your identities?
I came out in US, not in Mysteryland. Though in Mysteryland, I did have a lot of questions, and I know that if I say this word, I might even ask you to edit this out. But I'm one of those people who is mildly heterophobic. So the thing is that I only congratulate homosexual couples on their wedding. I never congratulate heterosexual couples at all.
Mhm.
But it is very sensitive to a person's pronouns and stuff like that. So even if they look heterosexual, but one of them is non-binary, I would not consider it heterosexual anymore. So they might get congratulated. But I was like, I know that when I was very young, I always had this burning question. I remember asked that why can't two men marry each other? I had this question, and I was always out of the box thinker. Given that in a pack of playing cards when I was young, my favorite card was a Joker. Most people don't even consider that as a playing card, but my favorite card was a Joker. We were playing a game, and I was like, "Look, I made a pair of Jokers." Like, Joker is not used in many games. Why are you so obsessed with that? I was very obsessed with the Joker in playing cards. And after I came here, and also the thing is that I'm very, and also because of my slightly heterophobia, I'm a bit grossed out with people being heterosexually perverted, while homosexually perverted people are fine somewhat for me. And also, I didn't like the fact that people in Mysteryland are one of the biggest users of pornography. I'm one of the people who believes that pornography should be banned. That's one thing I believe should be banned. I don't have opinion on anything else, but pornography of all types should be banned entirely. And yeah, it's like because I remember in my college they once forced me to watch straight porn, which I considered to be akin to conversion therapy. I didn't like it, and after I came here, there was I never liked being called straight. That's one thing. Like, I always consider being called straight as offensive. So much so that I was selectively mute in Mysteryland. For a long time, I was selectively mute. So I would not talk to any woman other than my mom, actually. But after I came here, it was like the reason was clear that I was not actually homosexual, but rather I was transgender. So so in an event, I wore a dress for the first time, and while most of my friends in US liked it, but my parents were not happy, and not to mention that they were like they were telling me to change the photo, and I told them that I won't do that. I would rather block all of my family at all. And that's where that's where my famous blockathon began on Facebook. Like, all of my relatives have been blocked on Facebook, and I have gone as far as blocking them on LinkedIn as well. If you can imagine how much I hate them. So I consider, except my parents, I consider all other relatives to be estranged for me. So I don't like any of them, and because of that, I wrote a will very early in my life because I don't want any of my blood relatives to get even a penny from me. So, and they were not nice. In fact, I would consider my parents are the reason why I couldn't complete my PhD program as well. I would say that it's because it's because I was not able to handle that, and it was very hard for me. I was not able to handle that what they did, and I went on academic probation, and I was like, and even now I might sometimes feel sad that some people who are quote unquote underdogs got their PhD, while people like me who was always smart from my childhood could never complete a PhD. That's something that I would always be like worried about. Even though it made the case of my asylum stronger, and so I got asylum, and now I have a green card. So next year I should be getting a citizenship soon. So
Is there anything else you'd like to say about how your parents responded? Anything you gestured towards the fact that they didn't respond well and that your other relatives didn't respond nicely, but is there anything else you would want to say?
yeah, they called me in the middle of the night, and like I was sleeping, and they were like, delete that photo on Facebook. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I also told them that that's my Facebook, not yours, so you don't have any right to say what I can or I can't do. I was never a fan of Mysteryland culture at all, but that proved to be the last straw. I was never a fan because of the fact that I don't know if you have this information. I just got diagnosed last month that I also have APD or audio processing disorder. And because of that, I don't like phone calls at all. But the problem is that in Mysteryland, everything is done by a phone call, which is very frustrating. I'm like, why can't you just text or do something else? Or email? For me, even Zoom would be better than a phone call. I always tell people that if you want to talk, then Zoom me. Don't don't call me. I even tell people to write my name as a number as a DNC so that they don't call me. But I was never a fan of like that, and the thing is that I put a lot of like I told a lot of bad things about that country, saying how filthy they are and stuff like that. I put so much, and that also led to me having more internalized racism. And because of that, if somebody is from Mysteryland, while I know the language, if they try to speak to me in any of their languages, I'm like, speak in English. On the other hand, if someone tries to speak to me in Spanish, that's okay. So I don't even want to talk in any Mysteryland language, and I'm like very much like, yeah, I'm like, I don't even consider Mysteryland as my home. The only good thing about that is probably it made my asylum case stronger, and I think that that's a good thing that happened because the thing is that within like a couple of quarters, I just got like I was I was kicked off the PhD program, and I would have had to leave for Mysteryland had I not got the asylum. So,
Can you maybe elaborate on? You said you didn't complete your PhD program. Why did that happen?
oh, because of the fact that after my parents like were hurt me, it traumatized me so much, and I couldn't like focus well on my classes, and so I got bad grades, fell on academic probation, and even though I came out of probation the next quarter, but my professor thought that he had enough with me, and so
I'm sorry that happened to you.
and then there was another professor who first looked nicer, but the problem is that he also kicked me, but he kicked me in the middle of the quarter with nothing for me to do. So I would like and to add insult to the injury, this professor was from Mysteryland, the second one who kicked me, and that increased my hatred to Mysteryland if it did anything. So
How old were you when you came out as trans?
I think I was like 24.
Did you feel now looking back on your childhood that there were any signs that you might be trans or
There are probably a lot of signs, but unfortunately in Mysteryland there is much more toxic masculinity than here. Interestingly, Mysteryland is one of the rare countries where it's like the AFAB people who get diagnosed with autism more than AMAP people.
interesting?
Yeah, Mysteryland is a very oddball country of a sort.
So you're 24, and how old are you now?
I'm 29. I'll be turning 30 in July.
It's coming up.
Yeah, so that's what the thing is. So the good thing about me getting asylum is that I was always legally present in the US, so that's one thing that saved me.
Can you talk a little bit about the asylum process? What was the basis for your asylum claim?
Oh, because I'm trans, that was the basis. And I got asylum like, and because I also had a good degree, I had like a very advanced degree, it also helped me get an asylum very quickly. because I think that if someone is like has a higher degree, it's slightly easier to get asylum than someone who does not have.
And what was the process like of attaining asylum?
Well, I just had to I got a pro bono attorney, and then I went to like San Francisco one day, and then I had an interview, and then within 2 weeks they had their decision made, and the decision was that they granted me asylum.
How did you feel in that moment?
I felt very happy when I got asylum, even though I believe that UC Davis didn't like understand that, and I believe that they violated the AB 540 rule on the asylum thing. Because I think as per AB 540, when someone is an asylee, they immediately become like a resident of California. But UC Davis did not respect that, and they continued treating me as a non-resident.
What was the interview like when you were seeking asylum? Did they ask intrusive questions or like?
Yeah, they just asked a couple of questions about why don't you want to go back to Mystery Land or stuff like that. Yeah, again, this was replaced by the name of the country, but I'm just you putting a placeholder, and then I said that this is how they treated me and this is how the system is.
Is there anything else you feel like you'd like to say on that topic about seeking asylum?
I just would like to say that it's possible. It can be hard, but it is possible, and if anybody wants to apply, I would recommend them to apply in California. Basically. And yeah, and there are other points they put when they assign us when they select, like probably I think they also look at if you have a degree, if you have an advanced degree. And since I already had a master's degree by then when I applied for asylum, so they were like, so I think that makes it easy. But yeah, but the thing is that, and also if you're legally present in the US, that makes it a bit easier to apply for asylum.
Were you here because you were pursuing your graduate degree?
Yeah, I was on a student visa.
Hmm.
But now instead of a student visa, I have a green card.
And you said you're going to get citizenship soon.
Yeah, because it takes 5 years for an asylee to get citizenship. So, and since my green card has a date of 2019, so I should be getting it in 2024. And I'm very excited when that happens because I will be no longer be associated with Mystery Land anymore.
So where did you find support and affirmation as you came out?
Oh, I found support and affirmation from my friends mostly. It was mostly it had to be like all my friends and also my American mom.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have support from them. I don't have any support from my birth family.
And are your friends, or are they some or many of your friends queer identified or trans?
Some of them are.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very hard to get a group of just like that, and so some of them are like there are many people who are trans, queer, and also many people who are cis and queer as well, and also there are some people who are heterosexual. But yeah,
And you said you have an American mom?
yeah.
What do you mean when you say that?
Oh, mean that I consider her to be a motherly figure.
Who is she? How did you find her?
Oh, I met her when I came here the first time, and she was very nice. And like just less than a week after I came to US, I broke my arm, and she was there for helping me.
And when you say that your friends and your American mom supported you and affirmed you as you were coming out, what do you mean when you say that? How did they provide support and affirmation?
like using my correct pronouns, using my correct name and stuff like that. Fortunately, it was much easier for me to change the name here on my records. So now currently my legal name and everything just says Phoenix. And also my green card says Phoenix. It's like it doesn't have my dead name at all.
That's great. So what does it feel like to, emotionally to have figured out your identities? Do you feel happy and empowered in your identities as queer and trans?
Yeah, I feel I'm happy and empowered, and I feel like I feel like that. I feel very happy too, and yeah. And the other thing is that ever since I was young, I never liked babies.
Okay.
So that was probably one of the main reasons behind my heterophobia. Because I'm fine with heterosexual relationships between two cats or two dogs, but not between two people, because I love kittens and puppies, but not babies.
Why do you think that is?
Or maybe mainly due to misophonia.
Wait, what's misophonia again? It's a sound thing?
It's a hatred of some sound, it's misophonia. What's interesting is that because misophonia is mostly based on pitch, not volume, which means that I would actually prefer to be in a room with blazing fire alarm instead of crying baby.
Should have brought my toddler to the interview. Just kidding. So that you mentioned you're autistic and that you have audio processing disorder.
Yeah, and yeah, some people talking about the baby, some people also say that, but I say that they don't make the same pitch sound. So I love cats meowing. I think they look very cute when they meow.
So you mentioned that you're autistic and you have audio processing disorder. Can you elaborate a little bit on what both of those mean to you, how they impact you on a daily basis?
Yeah, by autism, the thing is that I'm very direct, straightforward person. I will always be really blunt. I don't like when people like go across the point and stuff like that. For me, the things I hate, like I hate the concept of tough love, and I also hate the concept of like I also hate people who are passive aggressive. Because for me, what I say is that if someone is aggressive, I would rather have them be active aggressive rather than passive aggressive.
And why is that?
Well, because that's direct, and I like people who are direct. So I'm one of the people who say that I would prefer a front stabber over a back stabber.
Is there anything else about your autism that you would like to talk about, like how it shapes your experiences?
Well, the thing is that here it is easier because here some people are like they are fine if you don't like if you ask them their names several times if you don't remember faces. But in Mysteryland it was considered rude and I never liked it. And also the fact that age respect and age authority is another thing that I hated in Mysteryland. Because I don't believe because I believe respect is earned, not given.
Any other autistic traits that you feel like are pretty present for you?
Yeah, there is also mostly like probably the fact that I love cats and dogs more than people and more than humans. In fact, I always say that whenever I meet someone who has an animal, I would say, "How is everybody and how is your animal?" I would ask a separate question just for like how an animal is. but I wouldn't ask any question about this. And again, just like I said, I hate babies. I never congratulate whenever a baby is born, just like that. Though there is an exception, though, and the exception is if the baby is born to homosexual parents. It's mainly because I wish I had homosexual parents.
Yeah, because you've gone through a lot of trauma with your
Yeah, and I said I have a bit of heterophobia, so and I always think that homosexual parents are much less likely to show tough love and more likely to be egalitarian rather than authoritarian. And because I'm autistic, the problem is that most of the parenting style in Mystery Land is mostly about like complacency and overconfidence, stuff like that. Problem is that those two things never apply to autistic people because they perpetually have low self-esteem. And the other thing I hated is the punishment-based culture. I only like reward-based culture. And because where I work for the state, it's mostly reward based, and so I like it. Not that the reward need not be material, it would just be appreciation of your work is also fine. It doesn't have to be a material reward. But in Mysteryland it was mostly punishment based, and that's what I found on Facebook for one of my friends who was saying that there is nothing much difference between US and Mysteryland, because in Mysteryland they would fine you for non-compliance, but here they would like put your name in a raffle for like complying with something. They thought that it was nothing different, but for me, I would be more motivated in a culture where your name is put in a raffle rather than a culture where you are punished or fined for non-compliance, because I like reward based. And also because I don't like to work under pressure, reward based is it doesn't give as much pressure, because in the worst case you don't get the reward, you don't lose anything. But punishment based puts a lot of undue pressure because you lose more, like you don't gain anything but you lose everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you were autistic?
I was diagnosed much later at the age of 24, again when I was in US. But I think there were many signs in my childhood where like if I knew that I was autistic, then it would have been much easier for me. For example, while giving GRE, I would have been entitled to 50% extra time, which would have helped me get a better score.
And why do you think you were diagnosed later in life?
Well, because there's no mental health provider, and what's interesting is that the where I come from, the population of Mysteryland is much higher than the population of California. But California has more than twice the number of mental health professionals as Mysteryland.
So you didn't really have access to mental health care.
And that was second point which helped me get like asylum very easily, because not having access, and now I take pills every day. And I don't know, but people say that when you take pills for like autism, anxiety, you take it like forever, you never stop. I'm not sure if it's true, but yeah, I have been taking it for 6 years now.
And that's for anxiety.
Yeah, I take like Lexapro for it. And no doctor has ever recommended me to lower the dose or anything. So
do you think the fact that you're trans, your experience as somebody who's trans as queer is shaped by your autism?
possibly because I was always a person who used to question everything. I'm always a person who believes in moral courage. I don't believe in obedience. That's one of the reasons why I always have like why I always put religious people as a negative point, because of even though there is a very rare exception of place where I am very obedient and I believe that people are and I've considered that to be the most conservative part of my life is when it comes to traffic rules. Like when I'm driving, I would be like a very religious follower of traffic rule. Even if the streets are empty, I would never go above the speed limit. And I'm one of those people who believes that right turn should not be allowed on red light.
In Massachusetts, I think they don't allow a right turn on a red light. I
Yeah.
had to get used to that.
But yeah, I used to, for a long time, I used to never do that. People behind me used to honk, but I still waited for the light to turn green. And for me, I'm like, I always go at the speed limit. I never cross. Even if it is like 1 mile per hour higher, I would just release my feet off the gas. But yeah, and also I like to drive electric cars more than gas powered ones, mainly because the gas cars, I believe, are too jerky. Electric cars have a much smoother acceleration.
Do you have an electric car? Oh no, you don't have a car, right?
And I don't have a car. I have a driving license which I just got last year, technically, but I don't have a car yet. But the thing is that if I have one, then I would get like a disability license plate because of my disability. And again, I'm not interested in placard, just the license plate, because for me it's more about visibility than parking. So in reality, I might never even park at a blue space, but I only want people to know that I'm disabled when I'm driving.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So are you out as autistic everywhere you go?
Yeah. In fact, that's one thing. Like, unlike my trans identity, I want people to know that I'm disabled. And that's why whenever I go shopping, I always take my shopping cart with me, because that makes people think that I'm disabled, which I really am. But
And why is that? Do you think that you want to be out as autistic as disabled generally?
well, because of the various instances of tough love I received when growing up, and I don't like tough love. I want people to show like treat me like they would treat a disabled person.
Compassion
Yeah,
and understanding.
yeah, because I hate tough love.
Are you ever concerned about bias?
Somewhat, yes. And I know that people with invisible disabilities, they are like, because you don't see them as disabled, many people consider them as like non-disabled people, but I want to let people know that I'm disabled, so that
Do you think people understand what it means to be autistic when you tell them you're autistic, or do they come to that conversation with some misunderstanding, some bias?
in where I work, people know it very well. In fact, I have been hired as like a Leap employee. Leap is like a program which helps people with disabilities get into the workforce. The program was just made so that people would like, they wanted to increase the participation of disabled people in the workforce. So however, once you get like a position as a LEAP certified, then once you pass probation through LEAP, then you are no longer eligible to take LEAP. You have to go through the regular list, because it's just to get the entry into the workforce, as they say, just to get a foot in the door. Like once you have a foot in the door, then they don't care about if you're a LEAP or not, because after that it's because leap doesn't even come into the picture when you are like giving an interview. It only comes into a picture after like you sign the tentative offer and stuff like that. Only after that they would say, oh, this person is a leap candidate. So
And then how does that, what kind of support do you receive as a LEAP candidate?
Oh, more frequent evaluations.
Is that a benefit?
It's a benefit because I know for sure that what I should be doing and stuff like that. While others like only have 3 evaluations if they have a 12-month probation. But for me, for a 12-month probation, I had 12 evaluations.
Does that give, do you have mentorship as well?
Oh, the evaluation is just given by like my supervisor. So yeah, interestingly, where I work, sup means supervisor and man means manager. So sup man would have a much different meaning, but they know that, but they know what it is, so they reverse it and they call it man sup instead. Otherwise it would mean supervisor manager if you say that. Yeah.
So do you find that you have to feel like you are masking around people sometimes or a lot?
Some people do say that I don't look like autistic or something, which I don't consider it a compliment at all. Some people say that, and people know one thing about the fact that because I don't like phone calls, so people know that one thing, that because there is very few types of people who don't like phone calls. I prefer Teams meeting instead, like Teams, Zoom. Like we use Teams mostly. Like in my job, we don't use Zoom. Sometimes we use WebEx as well. And I always have my subtitles on. I also need subtitles when I watch a movie or watch something on TV. The only way you do that if you are watching at a theater is you need to go early and ask them for the subtitle goggles.
And why are subtitles helpful?
Well, because of my auditory processing disorder, I can't like understand what people say very easily, especially if there is a lot of background noise or anything going on. Interestingly, I have much better resolution when it comes to like non-speech sounds, but I'm much worse when it comes to speech. For example, once my roommate was asking me, "Did someone knock the door?" I'm like, "No, it's construction noise." She still looked at it and there was nobody. I told you that it's construction noise, and she was like, "How did you know?" Well, because the sound of someone knocking the door and construction noise have different pitches, and I can identify which pitch is what. Interestingly, I can identify beats, pitches, and all, but I can't identify speech, which makes me love music without vocals more.
So are you out as trans and as queer at work?
Uh, some people know it, so and because I mostly wear feminine outfit, most people do use she/her pronouns. And I never had a problem using the women's restroom though.
Oh, you don't feel like you're not harassed or when you're in the bathroom, or people don't make you feel uncomfortable in the bathroom.
Oh, the thing is that in state people don't do that. Like any state building, if it is a random building, it was more likely, but in state building, not so likely. But also, given that I've been living full time for a long time, so that's another thing that makes it like.
You mentioned you're mostly not misgendered at work.
Yeah, mostly I'm not misgendered.
Sometimes are you?
Yeah, but mostly I don't know why, but it's always the security people who are the most bigoted I have seen.
I think they're sort of aware of the fact that you're trans, but they're intentionally using the wrong pronouns.
Yeah, I believe that security people are usually the most bigoted. And
I think it's toxic masculinity.
Yeah. and because of that, I also have like internalized misandry inside me too. And I hope you know what misandry
Yes.
is. It's the counterpart of misogyny.
Um, so tell me about your strengths as somebody who is out as both disabled and queer and trans. What would you say your strengths are?
The fact that autism is one thing that can be your strength and weakness at the same time, because my strength is the fact that I will always adhere to the routine. I prefer routine. I don't like chaos. And because of that, there are things that I enjoy doing, like scheduling, that many people find very hard and boring. I like it. And also because state jobs, they don't put so too much pressure. Well, actually, they say that you work under pressure, but in reality, what they mean by pressure is nothing compared to what grad students face. So, but yeah, and because of that, I think that it's much like it fits well with what I am. So it's like so it feels very well. Unlike when I was doing PhD or engineering, which did not fit well, and they were also more punishment based rather than reward based. And I'm not a fan of, like, I would might though it would be my biggest disappointment that I never got a PhD, but I might never want to get one either. It's mainly because I don't know which field I will get in, and yeah, so it's always a thing. I'm one of those people who believe that if you have a master's, you should not be required to take classes in your PhD. Hmm. I believe in a depth only PhD program because I'm not a breadth person.
You're not a what person?
I'm not a breadth person. I'm more of a depth person. Because of that, I don't like small talk. I like to go in depth instead.
I think that's related to your autism.
Yeah, because and also I don't understand why do many people force you to do small talk. I hate small talk. And one of the way I say it for small talk, the slang I use is "hey" is for horses.
How does that relate? Explain.
Oh, it's like when people do small talk, they say "hey, hey, hey," and that's why you say "hey" is for horses. Yeah, I like to make. And however, unlike most autistic people, I love idioms. Most people think that autistic people have hard times with idioms, but I love them. I think they are ornamental language. So
Oh yeah, and you're a language person.
yeah, I love linguistics, idioms, and so on. What's interesting is that I learned to read before I learned to speak. And if people are not sure how it is, I'm like, it's like pattern recognition. I give the example of playing a game of mahjong. Do you know that game, mahjong?
Oh yeah, my grandmother plays it, and I played with her on occasion. Yeah.
Yeah, because mahjong game, you just match the tiles. Most of the time, you don't know what those tiles really mean. That's how you learn to read before learning to speak.
And how old were you when you learned to speak?
I think I was probably, I don't know, probably I was like 3 or 4. And what's interesting is that I was like, this is another thing which I might want to ask you to delete the fact that in Mysteryland, when you join kindergarten, they interview like kids going to kindergarten, but I was not saying anything. So technically, I failed that interview, but my parents like bribed someone to get admission. But what's interesting is that the same school, after a few years, I was like one of their best students, and I failed the interview in kindergarten, but later I became one of the best students. Imagine how it was.
That must have felt good later to you.
Yeah, but I didn't know that I failed the interview until much later in my life.
It's funny to me to imagine a kindergartner, somebody who's the age of a kindergartner, failing an interview for kindergarten.
Yeah, it's possible if someone is like really non-verbal but hasn't been like diagnosed and stuff like that.
Oh, I mean mainly like that there would be such a thing as failure, right? That a kid would be judged so that they would be determined to have failed, you know?
Mysteryland is a very judgmental country, I would say. It's so judgmental that people like judge everything a lot in Mysteryland. It's that's one thing that's also the reason why I don't like religious people, because I think religious people are very judgmental. So
Okay.
Mysteryland is like they are very judgmental, and since I don't like judgmental people, I'm not a fan of them. And what's interesting is the fact that they want everyone to get married, and I never wanted to get married. I want to stay single forever.
Okay, anything else you want to say about your strengths as somebody who is out as disabled and queer and trans?
Oh, the other strength is the fact that I have so much time and I'm also a fast learner. So that helps me with my job and also when I take classes. Being a fast learner helps a lot. So as long as you like respect my identity, you would have no trouble with me. That's what the thing.
So you mentioned that your class status is working class or lower middle class. Can you elaborate some? What does that mean to you?
Because everyone I say, the most people in the world are like either working or lower middle class, and I believe that we should not be bootlicking people from the higher class. So yeah.
Is that related to how you grew up at all? The way that you describe your class?
Yeah, my parents were bootlickers.
Were they low income?
Yeah.
So did you struggle? Did your family struggle?
Yeah, a lot. And the other thing I hated about my parents were the fact that they were too nice to the whole world except me.
Do you have siblings?
No. And I'm happy for that. But the main thing I'm not happy about is the fact that I never grew up with animals.
That would have made you happier as a kid.
Because for me I care more about like I find animals to be more of a thing than so much so that I wish I could conceive a kitten is what I sometimes feel. And I would love to hold kitty shower one day.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So have you had, in your adult life, in the past few years, have you had any concerns about your financial well-being?
I did. And that was like when I was kicked out of my PhD program. I was unemployed for 18 months.
Wow.
I was on the verge of being homeless, and I was living off of people giving money on GoFundMe. Can you imagine?
Sounds incredibly difficult.
I was living off of GoFundMe before I found a job. Interestingly, I found a job during COVID. Unlike most people who lost their job during COVID, I found the job during COVID, and just like how you see a cat like holds on to the prey, that's how like I held on to the opportunity, and I was one of the best employees soon. And that experience helped me to get a permanent job, because that was a temporary job, so it helped me to get a permanent job now with Department of Healthcare.
And was it really difficult to find a job during those 18 months?
Yes, like it was really difficult, and I was very lucky that EDD was like very nice about it. and because they really needed like a lot of employees, so they just hired everyone. Like even though if it was during the regular time, then they might have mostly hired me as like on a C scale, but they hired me at an A scale. But at that time, I was just happy. I was just thankful that I have a job and I have source of income. Even though even though I should have been hired as a C scale because I had at least had a bachelor's degree.
And why do you think it was so hard for you to find a job for those 18 months?
Well, mainly because of the fact that there are two things. First of all, there is also the problem of overqualification that sucks the most, I would say. In job market, the problem of overqualification is the worst problem in the life, I would say. And as far as like IT jobs are concerned, I was not coding much, so I lost like interest in that too. So I was more interested in analytical jobs, but the job market was like very slow. But after the pandemic, everyone like they hired a lot of people on EDD, and I kept on like working harder and harder, and last and finally I got this job. And because it's a permanent job, once I pass my probation, which is next month, I would have that job for life if I want. If I don't do anything, at least I will be there in that. But most likely than not, I would keep applying for higher level jobs because obviously I would want to get a promotion, and I would want to be at my boss's place few years down the line. It might take 10 or 15 years though, because I need that much experience, but yeah, that would be fun to see how like I climb the ladder and stuff like that, because I think that I like working for the state. I like it, and people are really nice, and the place where I work, the 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 director and deputy directors, it's not how you see in a particular in like a regular private company. It's very diverse. Interestingly, in my department, the director, the both the chief deputy directors, the assistant director, and the assistant chief deputy director, all five of these are women, and the director is a woman of color. So so there is much more diversity in like state jobs compared to like in private sector positions, because in state jobs they really do care about it, and usually state jobs have like a more participation of women than men.
So does that make you feel hopeful about your future?
Yeah, it makes me feel hopeful, and it also, yeah, it's good. And the only thing about deputy director's position is that those are appointed by the governor. So
So we have to see who's our governor.
yeah, and in 10-15 years, who will be our governor, I don't know. But yeah, though I like the LGBT policies of the current governor.
So when did you start attending ARC?
Oh, I started like in spring of 2022.
Okay, so you had already gotten this job by the time you started taking classes in the district?
I hadn't gotten this job. I was in EDD at that time, but I got this job like in July, so it was during summer. I was taking summer classes then, and I was learning QuickBooks. And yes, I have a certificate for QuickBooks. So if someone needs help with QuickBooks, then they can ask me because I have that certificate. But that's the only thing I can help people with, nothing else. Yeah,
Um,
because I don't want to get in trouble, but because I have the QuickBooks certificate, it's on my transcript. So I can help people, but only with QuickBooks, not with their tax returns.
So, is there anything else you want to say about your family's class background, your own history around your own class status as an adult before going on?
I would say that my family was like a very low middle class family, I would say. And in Mysteryland, it's like it's much worse being a lower middle class in Mysteryland compared to how it is here, because because of corruption, because there's a lot of corruption in Mysteryland. It's like when I was unemployed, I easily got food stamps and stuff like that. But in Mysteryland, you would have to pay a lot of under the table fee for that. Now imagine like asking an unemployed person to pay a fee to get these things. That's how messed up Mysteryland is. It's like it's really a messed up place. It's like, but now I don't really care. I just like, it's interesting when I was going to grad school, I used to attend most events where they gave free food because it helped me to stretch my budget more. But now, if somebody is giving free food, I'm like, I don't care. I would come only if I have more. It's nice, but I don't really like care so much about it. It's like because I have enough money, I can like afford groceries and stuff like that. So
I had the same experiences in grad school. I remember taking home food after events
yeah,
to help me stretch my own budget.
but now I don't really care much. I have a job, and interestingly, I like my job, and it's paying me well enough, at least for a family of one. It's okay. Maybe if you had a bigger family, you might need more money, but because I'm a family of one, and I will perpetually be a family of one, though I might have a lot of like pets around the way, but no, but I don't want any humans.
So you said you're saving up for a house?
Yeah, and yeah, though I would want to have a roommate when I get a house.
Where are you hoping to live?
Oh, in Sacramento, because Davis is out of the question, too expensive. I would have to be promoted to my manager's position, like to get to afford a house in Davis. So I'll be living in Sacramento. I need a roommate just to help me with housework, because unlike most people, I don't mind homework, but I really hate housework. I'm one of those people who really hates housework, and the thing I hate the most is cleaning room. I just can't do it. It's like because of my autism, I just can't clean rooms. My room is always messy. It's mostly covered in my hair, because my hair like it falls a lot, so and also my hair has a lot of split ends, so because of it, it's mostly covered in my hair. So yeah, room cleaning. I'm surprisingly I'm very well with dishes and laundry, but everything else I'm really bad. I'm bad at room cleaning and stuff like that. That's something I can never do. So for housework, I would need a roommate, because I would have them do all the work, and that's what happens in my where I'm living as well. Except for my room, my roommate does all the cleaning. Sometimes I do feel guilty about it, but she knows that I'm autistic and I have a hard time doing those things.
So is it okay if we move on to talking about your educational experiences?
Yes.
Okay, so starting off with a very broad question, can you tell me a little about your educational journey from high school to the present?
Oh, I was in high school, I was in Mysteryland, and I think I was a good student at my high school, but then I attended an undergrad college for engineering, and there people do a lot of hazing, and unlike here where people are only hazed in the snake pit, i.e. Greek houses. I call Greek houses as snake pit. Here people are only hazed in the snake pits, but in Mysteryland people are hazed everywhere. And some people say that, oh, but hazing is to make friends. I'm like, but what if you don't match to that type? Like I'm not friends with a lot of people from Mysteryland, for example. And also the fact that I didn't like that they were very perverted, and I never liked about them being so perverted and stuff like that. I don't. I always felt really bad about it. And then I got into a PhD program at UC Davis in engineering. I was It was good at first. Like my first year went really well. In fact, I was like in my lab. I was the first person to publish a conference paper from my professor's lab. Those who joined, and also I made it like a record that among all of his students, I was like the quickest one to get a paper published. So so my first year was like nothing short of like what you would say as like the best. Like that was like the best part. Like at the end of my first year, like if you looked at me at the end of first year, nobody would have even realized that I wouldn't last for. I would be struggling after 1 year, and I would be gone after like a year and a quarter. Like nobody ever like felt like this, because I was like having such a nice time. And but after that, once I was diagnosed with autism and came as trans, that's where things started getting dicey. And also I didn't like the fact that UC Davis, they force you to take a minor when you're in PhD program, and I never liked the concept of forced minor. In fact, I'm one of the people who believe that PhD means you shouldn't have to take classes. You should just be doing research from day one. Because I prefer the European PhD system where you do research from day one, no taking classes or anything, no doing TA-ship or anything. I like that program better. But unfortunately, like while I got good grades in all of the classes in my field, but in other classes I couldn't get good grades at all. And not to mention that the professors like were like and the department was like much more like restrictive than what the guidelines state for like graduate students. The guidelines state that graduate students must have a GPA of 3.0, but our department made it 3.5, making it more restrictive, putting more pressure. And my professor was like expected us to do a lot of research, expected us to not even get an A minus in any of the classes, let alone be a B, and expected us to like also help like writing solutions for the book. That's on another one of my pet peeve. I believe professors should not be telling their students to write solutions for the book. I believe that they should be hiring an external person to do that.
You said you dropped out after a year and a quarter. Is that right?
2 years and a quarter.
2 years. Okay.
Because I said after 1 year, I wouldn't have even known that I would be struggling 1 year later.
Mm-hmm.
So I only completed 7 quarters of my thing. Like I was registered in the 8th quarter, but I dropped off that quarter, and after that I have been on like an indefinite leave of absence.
You said things started to get dicey when you came out as autistic and trans.
Yeah, it's like after that I had some trouble, and then even though the first quarter was like somewhat okay after I came out as trans, that at least I managed to get one class. I managed to get a good grade, so at least my first quarter was okay, and I managed to like even submit a paper during the December winter break. But after the first quarter, like after that, after from the 5th quarter onwards, that's when I came out as like at first I came out like really dressed up myself as trans, and that's when my parents called me in the middle of the night and were like, and I kept asking them who was the one calling, and they would never tell me the answer who, because I wanted to know the specific people who were doing that. And they were always, and in my mind I'm like, they never helped us when my dad was unemployed. We had to tutor like a lot of students to get some money, so they never helped like us. They like my my relatives never helped my parents at that time, so now why should my parents listen to them? And I also say that people in mystery land aren't as kind as how people I see here, where like how they paid to my GoFundMe and how they helped me, like my friends hitch a ride. Nothing like that ever happens in mystery land. It's a culture of tough love which I hate. I hate tough love. I would consider tough love to be even worse than outright hatred. So yeah, so that's what I was. It became dicey, and after the 5th semester, I didn't have any electrical classes, engineering classes to take, and the other department classes, they weren't that. They were. I didn't have any. I didn't know how those people are. And they are much stricter with gradings than my department, and so it was really bad. I got really bad grades, and my professor kept on putting a lot of pressure on me. Even though I'm a person who hates pressure, I'm like a pressure averse person. To be honest, I'm always known to be a low baller. I always like to have a low ball estimate. I always like to set my bar really, really low because I don't want any pressure. Sometimes the bar can be as low as zero. And if you want to ask how am I getting A's in all my community classes, the thing is that because I don't have a goal, so I'm taking classes for fun. And so all I care about is to pass in those classes. I don't care about any grade. And since I don't care about my grades, I don't have any pressure. And because I don't have any pressure, I perform very well. On the other hand, if someone forces me to get an A, I wouldn't. That's how for me. I don't believe in the motto of aim for the stars, you reach the moon, because that induces a lot of pressure, and I can't work under pressure.
Does that give you anxiety?
Yeah. So and I'm a very hardcore pessimist. Yeah.
When you came out in your PhD program, how were you treated by others at the college, at the university?
The administration and like other professors, they were really bad. What's interesting once was the fact that the way I found that they were bigoted and much worse, passive aggressive, was the fact that I was actually a very I used to be a part of the graduate student association at UC Davis. So so during one of the meetings, I was asking them a question regarding like how about we have like some proper pronouns and stuff like that. And I was sitting at the front during that meeting, and someone from the back of that auditorium didn't hear what I was saying. Know that I don't blame anyone from the back for not hearing or understanding what I'm saying. But the problem was that the admin, the personnel was like, "Oh, his question was," and then I told them that, "Excuse me, I'm not a he, I'm a she or a they," and then they told, "Oh, the question was." So there are two questions. First of all, why didn't you use correct pronouns after I told you to? And secondly, if you really wanted to just say the question, then you could have just told the question at the first place. You didn't have to use any pronoun at all. Because admins, they are like really bad, and that's why I'm never a fan of donating to any university. Because admins take everything. If I want to help someone, I would directly help the student, not the university. And then they're like, and so I don't like those. I was never a fan of, like, you see, Davis, how the administrators treated and stuff like that. And as far as the students are concerned, engineering students, unfortunately, they were not nice either. They were probably marginally better, but not much better. They were just tokenizing me. I would consider tokenism to be better than exclusion, but not much.
How did they tokenize you?
They were like the trans one, and you are the only trans person I know and stuff like that. And also one of them who took me to the court for my when I filed for a name change, took me to the court, and a few days later was writing a Facebook post like misrepresenting Caster Semenya as a trans woman when she is not a trans woman. You know that athlete Caster Semenya.
Mm-hmm.
She is a cis woman. She is not a trans woman. And so that's how I found that, oh, he's just tokenizing me. So most people, they just tokenize. That's how the students do, while the professors and administrators, they just are exclusion. Because in my work, I found the four quadrants of like inclusion exclusion thing. There is a exclusion, then assimilation, tokenism, and inclusion. So tokenism is like higher. Tokenism happens when there is like when uniqueness is respected, but there is no belongingness. Well, exclusion is no uniqueness, no belongingness. And assimilation is no uniqueness, but there is a high level of belongingness. And inclusion is both have good uniqueness and belongingness. So I feel much more included at my job. I don't feel like tokenized or something.
Anything else you want to say about your experience at UC Davis?
Yeah, and yeah, it was like, and after I like what's interesting is that after it's so strange that when I was in UC Davis, no professor wanted to work for like wanted me to work for them. It's engineering is such a conservative department that they know that someone, so they consider me a failure, and nobody told me that nobody wants you to work for them and stuff like that. But when I went to EDD, when I was saying, everyone wanted me to work for them. It was like I was like that MVP. And I also remember when there was like a tug of war between two branches on whom I should work for.
That must have felt good. A good change.
Yeah. Though the thing is that it was good at EDD, I was also mentoring a few people, but the problem with that is that it also led me to burnout. Especially when someone said that I'm surviving in this job only due to you, that made me, while that felt good, but that also resulted in a lot of burnout for me. Yeah, I was burnt out, and once I apologized to my mentee when I was because I might have sounded rude when I sent the email. So I told her that I'm really sorry, I have been going through a lot, and then she was like, yeah, I can understand, it's just setting right boundaries.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, so yeah, sometimes even if you're a good performer, you can have like the burnout, and that also reminds me of a dream that I had at that time. One of the famous dreams was the fact that I was having a dream that someone was putting gold medals on my neck. Yeah, everyone would be happy when you get a gold medal, but they were like continuously going on putting a medal after medal, and then instead of feeling happy, I was just having inconvenience. I was not even able to stand upright, and it's like and and I realized that that had a spiritual meaning. Spiritual meaning is that it's the burden of success.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about your experiences at ARC and SEC now.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to go to community college?
Oh, just because when I was working for EDD, I just got very much fascinated with accounting concepts. And due to that, I thought that maybe I should take some classes so that I can probably get an accounting job. But then I got an analyst job, and so I lost interest in accounting slowly. And so, and like in fall of 2022, last year fall, I took like Spanish class for fun to see how it would be, and I loved it. I took level 2 Spanish at ARC, and also I took an accounting class as well, but that's when I felt like I was losing interest in accounting slowly because I don't work for EDD anymore. And so I was just like, still loved Spanish, so now I'm like, and also sometimes it happens that you might not stick to a field, you might lose interest in many things. However, I would like to go back to what, like my engineering thing. The thing about engineering, what's funny is that I loved all the theory classes, but I hated all labs.
Why is that?
That was really showing that I was never meant to be a good engineer, because since I loved theory classes, it meant that I was able to understand the concepts and stuff like that. But in practical situations, those things usually don't work.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can't just put numbers in the formula and you would get a result, but in reality that never works, because the equipments they are using, they have their own errors and stuff like that. And because of that, I was never good at labs, because I always thought that because labs, like what should happen in reality never happened in labs, so I always never liked engineering. I always thought that it's it's very boring. And as far as accounting is concerned, I would say it's almost like engineering, except the fact that it has more diversity.
Hmm.
Engineering has more diversity than, like, I mean, sorry, accounting has more diversity than engineering. That's the only difference I see. And accounting is also mostly just number crunching. And I love a good number crunching thing. How I do and stuff like that, because that would help me, like, to see my budget for buying a house. That would require a number crunching and stuff like that. I would also have to wait till like July probably, because that's when I might get my like annual MSA merit salary allowance, that 5% increase you get. So that should also put my budget 5% higher. So yeah, it should be okay because I live single, so it should. And I don't want to buy a very good house. Any house is fine because I might sell it and buy a better one later when I get enough equity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And given that I work for the state, I would keep getting I would try to keep getting promoted, which gives me higher salary and also higher buying power. That
So are you mainly taking language classes right now?
yeah,
You said you took Spanish classes before that you're planning to take an ASL class.
I have registered for the ASL classes.
Oh, the summer class.
Yeah.
So what has your experience been like taking classes at ARC and now SCC? Well, I guess you're not in your class yet at SCC, but how would you
I am in
describe
my class.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, but I think both of the places are similar. There is no difference per se between ARC and SCC. It's just the fact that they are two branches from the same place, so there is no difference. But I like taking classes online because I'm a very fast learner. And because I'm a fast learner, I think that taking classes offline would be like a waste of time for me.
Are you taking only asynchronous classes or sometimes do you take Zoom-based classes?
Only asynchronous.
Mm-hmm. And how has your experience been as somebody who is queer, trans, and autistic in the classroom? Has that come up for you?
I sometimes like in Spanish they use gender neutral language. They have the letter E, and I always use words with letter E instead of A and O. So that's okay. And like in ASL, I've asked the tutor and the teacher to know how to say a non-binary person in ASL.
So do you know how to?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, but one thing I find interesting is that this means beautiful and this means trans.
Oh, that's nice.
So beautiful and trans have very same symbol, except that for trans you do it near the chest.
That's beautiful.
So trans is beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
and ASL knows it really well. Yeah.
So are you out in your classes, in your online classes?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. How does that come? How are you out in like the discussion forums, and how do you come out?
Oh, my name does have they them written on it,
Oh, right.
and also I chose honorific of MX for my classes.
Can you explain that?
Well, like Mr. and Miss, MR and MS, there is MX, which is a non-binary honorific,
Mm-hmm.
and very few people know it actually.
So how have you been received when you come out, or when you are out?
I haven't had any problems per se at the class, but yeah, I enjoy it. More importantly, it also gives me like the bus passes.
Oh, being a student, you get the bus passes.
Yeah,
That's nice.
and because when I go to work on Tuesdays, like the bus stops right next to my home, and over there at my office I need to walk like 5 or 10 minutes to reach there. So that's how it is.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's always nice that you get that, and it's yeah. I like studying because, and also for me, studying is not like my first priority. My first priority is like working, so that's why I can't spend a lot of time studying. I can only spend some time, And you can imagine if I can just spend 2 hours a week and still get an A. So
What have you enjoyed, or what have your professors done anything in particular to make you feel included and like you belong in in their classroom?
like in Spanish, they put a note about gender neutral language and stuff like that. While in my accounting classes, like those things have never come up because everything was written, so there was no contact per se. So those things never came about in like any of my accounting classes. However, one of my favorite classes from accounting was the ethics class.
Oh, how come?
Well, because previously I was an engineer and I was not good at like writing essays and stuff like that. But that one class made me a very good essay writer, I would say. Just took one class, and that class was not even related to like writing or anything. It was just ethics in accounting. But it made me essay writer because every week we had to like answer 10 to 12 essay based questions.
Hmm.
So it was like, and because of that I liked that class, and I was like, yeah, ethics is full of essay, and I used that skill to write my SOQ. You might know what an SOQ is because your partner works for the state.
I actually can't think of what that means. What does it mean?
Statement of qualification.
Oh, okay.
So I wrote so that helped me to write an SOQ, and that's what they check first when they want to decide whether they want to like interview you or not. Because if you have a strong SOQ, that helps you get an interview, and after the interview, if you impress them, then they would go forward. And there's a lot of like stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. It can be a long process.
Have you any had experiences being misgendered inside or outside of the classroom as a student in the district?
uh, Probably, I think so. Like I think like in one of my Spanish classes, probably I once had that thing. But then I told them that this is what I use. But it might probably have been an unintentional one because people were learning.
Learning the language, yeah.
So when people are learning the language, then there is always that benefit of doubt that it might be an unintentional misgendering, that they don't know what it means. Like, so those things happen. In fact, that also brings a question of like, how do cis people feel about being misgendered? I found it like my roommate once got misgendered by American Express in a mail, and she just laughed at it. I was like, I find it funny that you just laugh at the fact that you got misgendered. Well, mainly because she doesn't have the same experience that I have around being misgendered. So, and that's why she thinks that it's funny that they called her Mister.
Yeah, because she doesn't have the experience of being misgendered generally, and so she
Yeah,
doesn't feel bad to her. So when it happens, it's on accident.
yeah, because sometimes cis people can also get misgendered, but it's really rare. It can also happen if someone like speaks from someone belongs to a culture which has unary gender.
What gender?
Unary.
Can you explain that?
Or like you know what binary is two, unary is one.
Oh, okay.
There are languages where there is only one gender. Like the languages that are not gendered at all. So for them, they can't differentiate between any genders.
So when speaking English, you might actually make more mistakes with misgendering because your original language is unary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interestingly, if someone says that there's only one gender in the world, I'm fine with that actually. But who says two is not okay? If they say more than like three, four, anything is fine. Oh, Interestingly, that's what I find funny, that if someone says there is exactly one gender, that's okay, but not if they say two. Because if they say it's exactly one gender, it's like saying that all human race is the same, almost like.
Mhm. Yeah, one allows for more variability.
Yeah.
Um, so, what does it feel like? You just mentioned what it feels like for cis people to be misgendered. What does it feel like to you to be misgendered? And why do you think it's important for people to really try to use the correct pronouns when they refer to you?
Well, because sometimes it shows that they just don't care, and they are just like, they just do it just because they have certain feelings, which I believe that they should follow the rules of where they are working, and especially if they are working, then they should follow the rules of work, and as they say, work-life balance. This is one thing I like about the state of California jobs, is they allow for very good work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to say? Anything else you want to say about what it feels like to be misgendered and why it's important for people to get your pronouns right?
It feels really bad when you get misgendered, especially if you have lived that for a long time. Especially if you have also gotten like surgery. Like for example, I have already done my vaginoplasty
Mm-hmm.
last year, so it feels really bad for me to have done that surgery and still getting misgendered. And that's why you see this pink taco here.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a sign of the fact that I have done vaginoplasty.
So, what do you think faculty can do to make queer and trans students feel respected in the classroom in general? If you could, create an ideal classroom to help trans and queer people and non-binary people feel included, what would you say?
I would say that usually it's the actions that speak more than words. And when I started working for the state, my manager put her pronouns in her signature after seeing that I put my pronouns. So sometimes what I say is that puts like that sets an example when you do that. And because of me, I see more and more people putting pronouns in their email signature.
How does that feel?
It feels like they are bringing the fact that it feels like they are doing really well, because actions speak louder than words. So just by saying that, oh, use correct pronouns, that would be hard. But if you really put your pronouns, that shows that you really do care. So that's one thing that the faculty can do, that they can put their own pronouns. I do want to say that making it mandatory won't work, because there will always be people who don't follow the rules. So that may not be a good solution, though it feels good on paper, because the enforcement is not that easy to enforce that. However, you can always set an example by like putting your pronouns as well, just like how I put my pronouns. So if the faculty do it, then it would make like people like me feel safer and more likely to trust that faculty.
Anything else you want to say about that?
And yeah, that's what I would say. Like actions speak louder than words, and also being a support network, and also like fortunately because I study online, this doesn't happen. But I always say that you must always side with the victims. Never, you should never side with the bullies.
Can you elaborate?
I don't know why the system always side with the bullies all the time. Because the bullies really know that that's what happens, and because of that they're like, and bullies are not just your peers. Usually the bullies are like the administrators at UC Davis. They are like big bullies. I don't trust anybody who works at UC Davis technically, especially if they're administrator or something like that. So it's like I don't trust anyone like that because they just bully you on they are known to gaslight the victim, and that's what to always show that oh it was your fault, not their fault. There are also some organizations which sound like they have a very catchy name and sound like they are very nice, but they're really not that nice. They are really terrible organizations. For example, I don't trust AAUW.
The American Association of University Women.
They're really terrible organization. They uphold patriarchy. And given my misandry, I don't like anybody who upholds patriarchy. In fact, anybody who ever uses the word gentleman can't be trusted. That's one example for me. Also, I never call anybody sir or ma'am either because first of all it's a word only to be used to people who have been like knighted by the royals, but not to mention I don't care much about royal family anyway. So it's supposed to be a title that's given, that's conferred. So because of that I don't like to call anybody sir or ma'am.
Can I ask you, have you had experiences taking courses that talk about that discuss queer and trans topics
I have never taken a single class like that.
in high school or in college?
No.
And why do you think that is?
Well, because in high school in mystery land it's really hard to do that, and unfortunately humanities in mystery land is much worse compared to how it is here, because in mystery land almost like a factory that everyone goes to engineering and stuff like that, like you're more or less forced to do that. And the problem with humanities is that they only care about the length of the answer and don't care about the content, and that's one of the things about humanities in mystery land, not like how it is here.
So form rather than substance.
Yeah.
Have you had classes that? So you have never taken a class that's ever focused on queer and trans topics at all?
I've never taken any class like that.
Do you think any of the classes that you do currently take at the community college could be more trans and queer inclusive, considering the topics?
Yeah, some of them can be, like for example, you can probably make Spanish and and ASL probably can be made more LGBT inclusive. Accounting classes is tricky. It's not that easy to know about it. Even though it was in payroll accounting where they said that the DOMA was abolished. That's the only queer inclusive thing that I saw there. But yeah, but in accounting, because it's mostly working with numbers, it can be really tricky to have like such topics. But Spanish and like ASL can easily be made more LGBT inclusive. Like have more queer topics. Interestingly, Duolingo is very queer inclusive. Did you know that?
Yes, I've noticed that actually, yeah.
And one thing is that because of my slight heterophobia, if there is no context, because the word for his and her are same in Spanish, unlike in English. So whenever it is about this word, I would always write it as his husband or her wife. I would never make it a heterosexual relation. I would always make it homosexual. I would always write it as his husband or her wife, because the word for his, her, and their, like the object pronouns are the same in Spanish.
So do you think you would like to take a class at some point that actually focuses some on queer and trans topics and
Possibly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Possibly, I might take that class sometime.
Which class? Oh, one of the classes, yeah.
One of the classes, sure. If you can let me know which class to take, I might even email you for some advice. Though I would only be looking at online classes though.
There's an Intro to LGBTQ Studies class being offered at ARC online this summer and in the fall, totally asynchronous.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have two classes in the fall, and this summer I have already have one class. Summer I don't take two because it's already stressful at half the time. While the fall, while in other like semesters I take two classes, never three, because even two class is stressful after working 40-hour weeks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So maybe in spring I might look into it.
So look at the classes offered at CRC too. I'm not sure if SEC is going to offer.
Yeah, I'm mostly based off of ARC, and I will be taking fall classes at ARC.
Okay. Yeah, I think part of the issue is that Intro to LGBTQ Studies is offered, there's only one section offered each semester. So it's not offered in all modalities all the time. So in the spring, it might not be offered totally online. But maybe if you don't mind enrolling at CRC, they might offer that online.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm enrolled at Los Rios, so I can enroll the class anywhere I want. And I believe you can take one class at ARC, one class at CRC simultaneously as well.
It's the benefit of taking online classes.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to take.
Yeah, the only problem is that the transcript will be split.
Oh.
That's the only problem, is that transcript will be split, not a single transcript.
So a general question for you: how important do you think it is to include queer and trans or LGBTQ plus topics in the course curriculum for you to feel included and seen?
I think that it is. I think that it should be very important, and I do believe that it should at least be an elective, if not. Like I wouldn't say that it should be compulsory, obviously, because that would draw a lot of criticism from people. But I do say that it should at least be an elective that should be offered. Like how Native American Studies is offered as an elective. So it can at least be offered as an elective so that people who want to learn should be able to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So if people don't want to learn, they don't have to learn it, but it can be offered as an elective so that people can like, oh, so this is how you do it, and this is how, so that it's important for people to know that there are people who are of different types.
Mm-hmm.
Especially given the fact that there are a lot of bigoted people everywhere. So
especially in this current political context.
Yeah. Thankfully, I'm happy that I live in California. I would never want to go to like any of the other states. Most other states I wouldn't want to go. Some states would be okay, but not most of them.
How does it feel to you seeing all of this anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation that's being passed around the country?
I do want to say that they are just making us a scapegoat in reality. They are just trying to, because previously they were, because it's just a trend. First they came for people of color and black people, then they came for gay people, now they are coming for trans people. They are just trying to find like people to be used as punching bags.
Does this make you not want to travel to those states?
I would never want to. In fact, I would never even want to have layovers in those states. Forget traveling. Because that's the main thing. It doesn't matter how good a city is. Layover only depends on state policies.